What is going on, everybody? Welcome into another Friday afternoon. We had actual semi-meaningful football yesterday. At least we got meaningful players, relevant players playing yesterday. All right, so the fantasy football season we're getting in here, it's full swing basically for redraft, and we're just a couple weeks away. I'm so freaking excited. So, welcome in everybody to another Friday AMA Ask Away as you will. Peter is always here. I think Peter gets notifications whenever I put up like the stream is going to happen because he's always the first one in here. But what's up, Peter? Happy Friday. How do you think Chargers wide receivers shake out this year? I have Palmer and Chark way down the depth chart on my bench. Probably worth dropping one to add another handcuff like Kendre or Estime. So I've been pretty in on Josh Palmer as a dynasty stash and a redraft flyer. I think that he honestly finishes as the best fantasy wide receiver on the team over McConkey and of course over Quentin Johnston. I think Palmer just has the most experience. He's got the most rapport with Justin Herbert. I think he's the most talented of all of the wide receivers on the team as well. So Palmer, I definitely hold on to. Chark is just kind of like if Kendre Miller is out there on your waiver wires right now, I'd probably drop Chark for Kendre. But I would hold on to Josh Palmer. That's how I view it. I would like to add Estime as well, but I wouldn't drop Palmer for him. I would drop Chark for Kendre, but I don't know what to do if you have another player that you can drop for Estime, because I'd like to pick him up and see what happens. But I wouldn't drop Palmer for him. Country time. Happy Friday, everyone. Sorry for all the field questions, but finally dealt him. So this is the last one. Traded Fields and Eckler away for Josh Jacobs in a 2025 fourth. How do you think I did? I think you did phenomenally. This is exactly how you take advantage of training camp / preseason news. You trade away the whatever possible upside shot of Justin Fields. And I'm not a big fan of Austin Eckler either. You just go up and you just get Josh Jacobs, who I think has the potential to be a top 10 fantasy running back. Perfect. This is exactly what you do. I absolutely love this. This is phenomenal. PJ, any new thoughts on the rookies? Your drafts haven't happened yet. So far, nothing has really changed from my rankings. My Superflex rookie rankings are still updated and accurate to my knowledge on the DLF website, so you can go check those out. My top 12 basically hasn't changed. And really like how I view all the other wide receivers after that, like in the second round, when you talk about like Leggett, Coleman, McConkey, Adonai, Polk, and Franklin, and all those guys, like it really hasn't changed. They're all still in one big tier, and my order has still held with all of those. I think I've raised Blake Corum up and Jalen Wright up, are both like mid to late second round picks. And then I love Ray Davis. I love Javon Baker. Those guys are in there too. Michael Penix, I think, is like a top 20. He's like 22 or 21 in my rankings, I think. So he's a back end second in Superflex leagues. And that's basically it. Because then after that, I think you can move up. Maybe some handcuffs. You can kind of learn the priority based on training camp news. Like Tyrone Tracy, I think, can move up. Braylon Allen seems to have locked in as the RB2 in New York. Will Shipley seems to be doing really well in Philly. Bucky Irving seems to be doing well in Tampa. So I think that there are handcuff running backs that you can move. I mean, I already had most of them, I think, above some other kind of day 2 or day 3 wide receivers like Jalen McMillan and Luke McCaffrey and some of the other kind of wide receivers like that. I've definitely raised up Jatavion Sanders. I think he's also a back end second. And he is over Ben Sinnott as my tight end 2 in the class. So there is that. But basically, nothing I think drastic has happened to sway me one way or another on any certain rookie. Like basically, my rookie rankings have more or less held from what they were right after the NFL draft, outside of maybe just like minor adjustments. Like I thought this guy could get there, but maybe he hasn't gotten there yet. This other guy's doing it right now, potentially, like Tyrone Tracy or something like that, has been getting a lot of waves in news. Braylon Allen, a lot of waves in news. So you can move those guys up and prioritize them over other handcuff running backs. But other than that, like the top 24 basically is more or less the same. Here for the memes with a $10 super chat. What's up, my man? Welcome in. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. How's it going? Took over an orphan team, single quarterback. Oh, good. So you're gonna have to build up another absolute monster contender. What is this? Is this my monitor? This is a black thing. It is. There we go. All right. Took over an orphan team, single quarterback, Josh Allen, Terry McLaurin, Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley. My only running back is David Montgomery. I have the 1, 4, 11, and 201. Have an offer in my inbox. 111 for Isaiah Pacheco. I am smashing the crap out of Isaiah Pacheco. That is really low for him in a one quarterback league. So I will absolutely take the 111, or I would absolutely trade the 111. Sorry. I would absolutely trade the 111 for Isaiah Pacheco. And then maybe you could flip him later or do something else with him if he doesn't necessarily fit your rebuild or retool more or less. You could probably try to go for it. I don't know if your wide receiver is good enough to go for a championship this year. But I mean, maybe if Marv absolutely explodes, you get Bowers or a Dunze or somebody like that at the 4 spot. Maybe you hit on whoever it is at 201 if it's like Keon Coleman or Leggett or something like that. Not sure if your wide receivers are good enough though depth-wise to compete this year, but at least from the basis of trading the 111 for Pacheco, I'm absolutely taking Isaiah Pacheco there in a one quarterback league for sure. So definitely doing that. Thank you for the $10 super chat as well. Thank you always for the support here for the memes. Country time 10 by 12 Superflex tight end premium. This is the final. This is the final roster then. Hurts, Carr, Watson, Brees, Saquon, Jacobs, Najee, and B-Rob is your 4 and 5. That's insane. DJ Moore, Higgins, Pickens, Kelsey, and Hawk. I like it a lot. I think your QB2 could use an upgrade, and maybe you could try to get a stud wide receiver 1. You might find interest in my video that's dropping on Sunday regarding one of your running backs. But that's I'll leave it at that. We'll see what happens. But I think if I were you to promote the longevity of this dynasty roster, I think I would try to move one of the running backs for a elite dynasty wide receiver 1. I think that's how I would look at it. And maybe upgrade your QB2, but you don't necessarily need to do that because you already have Hurts locked down. Watson should be solid. Carr can be whatever. And the main power of your team is the running back and wide receiver spot. And Travis Kelce at the high end. Always fantastic. What do you think is the realistic floor ceiling outcome for Jackson Smith and Jigba? So I think floor wise, he's not any worse than he was last year. Probably slightly better, maybe like 10, 15% better than what he was last year. Which probably puts him as like a solid like wide receiver 3 for fantasy football. Let's see, where was he at? Load. Because the benefit with JSN is that the offense is under the new offensive coordinator coming from Washington is that he ran a heavy 3 wide receiver set in Washington that obviously made Odunze great, made Jalen Polk do really well, and McMillan do really well. So that's kind of like the hope is that all 3 of them are out on the field, which was kind of a struggle for JSN with Tyler Lockett still. But if all 3 are out there, JSN is good enough to garner enough targets to be really, really good. So yeah, JSN was a wide receiver 4 last year. I think if you give him another 30, 40 fantasy points on top of that, just by getting over 100 targets, maybe getting over the 750 or 800 yard mark, I think that's kind of what you're looking at as a floor, which that's like a solid like wide receiver 3. Like, you look at Tyler Lockett himself last year was at 80 for 905. I think that's like pretty solid. Zay Flowers was 77 for 850 and 5. Both of those guys were like mid to back end wide receiver 3s. I kind of feel like that's the floor for JSN, assuming that he doesn't get hurt. More or less, that's kind of where I think you would be. If you're looking at like a true ceiling, I think that you're probably looking at something along the lines of like a Devonta Smith, maybe a Chris Olave. I think that he can get into the 1050, 1100, 1150 range, catch more than a handful of touchdowns, and does that on 70 to 80 receptions. That's kind of like where Devonta Smith was last year, kind of where Chris Olave was Calvin Ridley, was at 75 for 1,008. I think that's kind of what you're looking at as a ceiling in year 2 with Tyler Lockett still on the field. I mean, the ultimate ceiling, I mean, if injuries or stuff happens and JSN has a few games like Jordan Addison last year where he, has kind of like a condensed target share on himself, then I could see maybe he sneaks up into like the Michael Pittman range or the Devontae Adams. Like Devontae was 100 for 1,108. I think that's like getting into the back end of wide receiver 1. That's like ultimate upside, I think, if injuries and stuff happen for in favor of JSN. But I think you're more likely looking between wide receiver 16 to wide receiver 32 is kind of like the range that I would put him in for floor ceiling for this year, because he still has Tyler Lockett, still has Geno Smith if he goes back to 2022 Geno, or if he stays as 2023 Geno. First year of a new offense, how does all that stuff work out? So I think that's kind of what I'm looking at for Jason, and then build on that in 2025. That's what I'm hoping for. Philip, what's up, my man? Thanks for helping me out the past few weeks. I managed to acquire Caleb Williams. Fantastic. Now I'm trying to use Caleb to tier up. Am I sending Caleb and a 25 first, hopefully late, as a runner up for Lamar Jackson? Format favors rushing quarterbacks. 4 point. Yeah, no, this is the non PPR league that you're looking at. All 2025s, all 2026s, low activity. And you were the runner up. I mean, hopefully that's the 112 based on your lineup here. I would be willing to send Caleb in the 25 first. That would just mitigate the risk of if Caleb is good or not, or maybe has a down rookie year, not necessarily like down, but like an average rookie quarterback rookie year. I would do that just to go over and get Lamar Jackson. Then you'd have Lamar and Kyler. You have Brees as a QB3. That's great. The upside shot on whatever Justin Fields is. Obviously, your running backs are fantastic. Your wide receivers are fantastic. Trey McBride. You still have all of your other first in 2026 and a second in 2025. And in a low activity league, I think I value the known studs a little bit more, just because if there's no real activity going on, you can't flip and trade and do all that kind of stuff with ever changing values for rookies, or take advantage of players that might seem like they are overvalued at a certain time period and their value is going to dip back down. I think in a lower activity league, I think I would prioritize the extra known studs a little bit more. So I'd be willing to send Caleb, and what I am just going to put into the universe now as the 112 in 2025 next year. I would send Caleb in the 112 for Lamar Jackson here. Jerome, hey there. What do we do with Brandon Aiyuk? This is a very interesting situation. So, as of right now, I am holding Brandon Aiyuk, unless that you think that you can upgrade from him. If somebody else thinks that they can get like a buy low deal on him, and you can upgrade to a Garrett Wilson or a Puka Nacua pretty easily. I would be willing to send, if it was like Aiyuk and a 25 first for Puka or Garrett Wilson and a 25 second or something like that. Like that's kind of like the framework that I would look at doing. I think that I would be enticed into doing that and upgrade from Aiyuk. I think that if you want to side grade, you can side grade to Jalen Waddle, or maybe try to move over to Nico Collins, Tyreek Hill, something like that. Like I'm okay doing all of that. I just don't want to like panic sell Aiyuk on the thoughts that, if he goes to Pittsburgh, what's his value look like there? It might go down. If he goes to New England, it's probably going to go down. If he goes to Cleveland, it's probably going to go down. If he goes to Washington, it might go down, but that might be like an AJ Brown situation where I'm actually higher on Aiyuk because he went to Washington, but other people think that that's not a good thing. But I actually think that that's like a good thing. Like when AJ Brown went to Philly, people were lower on AJ Brown. I could see that happening with Aiyuk in Washington. So I'm hoping that's what happens. Honestly, what I ultimately hope is that he's the one that stays in San Fran. And I think that they should trade Debo. That's my ultimate hope. So that's why I'm still in on Brandon Aiyuk as like a back end dynasty wide receiver 1, is like the wide receiver 12 or wide receiver 13 or something like that. Like that's still the range that he's in. I haven't moved Brandon Aiyuk because of the idea that he might get traded. Ideally, he stays in San Francisco and is the wide receiver 1 for them for the next 3 or 4 years. Like that's, I don't understand why San Fran would want to trade him. I think that you You drafted Brandon Aiyuk to become the player that he is now. He is the player that he is now. So why are you not rewarding that? And why are you not paying for him to stay on your team? I just don't get it. So if I would not treat Brandon Aiyuk any differently than you would have a couple months ago, is basically the way that I was, or before the NFL draft. And make the same moves that you would have if you want to side grade or upgrade. That's what I'd be doing with Aiyuk. But I'm not like panic selling him for a first round pick or something like that, because I think he's worth more than that. So I just treat him as you would have had he not have all this news of a trade or anything like that. Oh, Philip, or should I hold Caleb and keep my first and use it to address it in season? RB very hard to acquire. No, I'd be willing to take Lamar Jackson and then figure out the running backs from there. Especially with all the wide receivers and stuff you have too. Like you can move Amari Cooper or Chris Olave or something like that a lot easier, I think, and get a couple running backs out of that than you would have first. I'd take Lamar Jackson. Mr. Mole, hey Addison, with the Puka injury news, this is a good time to obtain him. Looking to tier up at my wide receiver core with AJ Brown, Pittman, Olave, Aiyuk, BTJ. 12-team, one quarterback starts 7. Yes, I think this is a good time to trade up and go get Puka. And I would be using, I would use Chris Olave as my main upgrade piece to move up to go get him. So I think I would use Olave and Brian Thomas Jr. I would just trade both of those for Puka right away. Or if you have Olave and a first and go up and get Puka. Or if it's something like what I just mentioned with the Aiyuk trade, where it's Olave and a first for Puka and a second, or some other players that kind of equate to those values more or less. That's how I would look at it. I would be willing to upgrade from Pittman too. I think it might be more of a jump to go from Pittman to Puka than it would Olave to Puka. Because you can still sell the very young wide receiver with upside in Olave, whereas I think Pittman just kind of is what he is. And people are still kind of unknown and unsure about Anthony Richardson. So I think it might cost you more to move from Pittman to Puka than it would Olave to Puka. And I feel like I'd be more willing to do it with Olave too, just because I'm a little bit lower on him, it seems. I'm worried that if he doesn't produce this year, or if he doesn't have that breakout year like he does this year, then he's just going to be Terry McLaurin or Panthers DJ Moore, which is a fantastic NFL wide receiver, a very solid fantasy wide receiver, but he's been overvalued from that standpoint because he's been a top 12 dynasty wide receiver producing as wide receiver 20. That's overvalued, and his value is going to correct on that if he does that again. So yeah, go from Olave, upgrade to Puka. I think is a fantastic time right now. Tejas Chaos 30. Dynasty, one quarterback, Anthony Richardson, Christian McCaffrey, Gibbs, Amon-Ra Puka. Sheesh. Have the 102 and was planning on Neighbors filling out my wide receiver core. Got offered the 107 and T. Higgins, though, for the 102. Would you take it? No, I would hold on to Malik Neighbors. I like the offer, but the 1.07, this is kind of what I want to do just in the reverse. If I had the 107 and T. Higgins, I'd be trying to move up to go get Malik Neighbors or somebody along those lines if it's another, veteran wide receiver. Because then you're going to have T. Higgins and Xavier Worthy or BTJ. I love BTJ. Or if that's, Lad McConkey or somebody like that, I'd rather just have the one stud wide receiver than the two kind of wide receiver twos, assuming that rookie even gets to being a wide receiver two, depending on who it is. And if T. Higgins' struggles continue or anything, if he gets hurt again or anything, stuff could happen weird for T. Higgins to where the dynasty community is very spiteful. And not to say he gets Juju Smith-Schustered out of dynasty love, but we're very spiteful creatures for dynasty. So if T. Higgins has another rough year, his value is going to drop down to probably being a dynasty wide receiver 3 if he isn't already. So I'd keep Malik Neighbors. This is something I want to do on the opposite side, but if you're already have the 102, already have Malik Neighbors, I'd go for that. I'd just keep Neighbors. Blue Mountain, thoughts on Zay Flowers? Is he a good flex? I think he's a good flex. I think that he's going to offer just solid PPR upside, but he's kind of a guy that I would like to move to upgrade from just because I don't really know if there's really any ceiling with him. That's why I think that it makes him a good flex or a good wide receiver 3, just because he's going to be consistent. He's going to have a very steady target share as the 1A, 1B with Mark Andrews there. But I just don't know if that really offers any upside. The wildest stat that I have ever seen is that Lamar Jackson, or in Lamar Jackson's lifetime, the Baltimore Ravens have never had a fantasy wide receiver one. Like, that's just bonkers to me. I mean, it kind of makes sense considering the fact that the Ravens have only been a team for Lamar Jackson's lifetime, essentially. But like for the entirety of the Baltimore Ravens' life's life as a NFL team, they have not had a fantasy wide receiver one. Um, so I think that bodes not well for Zay Flowers, especially when you consider the fact that the team still wants to be run heavy, even more so with Derrick Henry now. Lamar Jackson has said that he's slimmed down, feels fantastic, and is faster. I think that their identity is a run first team still, and I think that Zay Flowers, while he's a good flex, I don't think offers much upside. Like if you could easily move from Zay Flowers over to DK Metcalf or Michael Pittman, or any of those other kind of like back end wide receiver twos that might feel like they're one tier above, I'd be trying to do that. And then I think that offers you more upside, similar longevity, similar floor, maybe even a better floor, but more upside and higher ceiling. But I think he's a good flex. Like I wouldn't be actively trying to move him. He'd just be somebody that I would be exploring trades with if you have an active league. James, Superflex. Some guys offering me Chris Olave in a 25 second for Keenan Allen, Derrick Henry, and David Montgomery. Just on a pure dynasty value standpoint, this is Chris Olave in the second pretty easily. Just a bunch of old guys that you're looking at producing, but the dynasty value here is on Chris Olave, and you get a free second. Basically, I would take Chris Olave, and then even if you don't like him, I think he's easier to springboard to someone else that you do actually like. That's what I would do. Like then my next move from this would be how can I turn Chris Olave in a second into Nico Collins or Garrett Wilson or somebody like that, like that's what I would be looking at as like my next move after this. Cause then you basically just turn Keenan Allen, Derrick Henry, and Dave Montgomery into a guy that I believe is like a back end top 10, like a top 10 dynasty wide receiver. If you can then make that next deal with Chris Olave in the second. So I would take Olave in the second. Or if that's the side you already have, then I would keep that side. Olave in the second, though, pretty easily. Blue Mountain 10-man PPR League, 6th pick. Wait, was there more? Oh, this is what you got out of the 6th pick as a redraft. Zay Flowers then is your flex. Kyron, James Cook, Amon-Ra, Devonta Smith. Did you get Amon-Ra at the 6? That's pretty good. Amon-Ra, then you came back and you grabbed Kyron. Then you got Cook and Devonta at the 3-4. I like this team. I think Zay Flowers works as a solid. Again, I would try to see if I can upgrade him. Maybe if you can find somebody who needs like an extra running back and send them Chase Brown or Raheem Mostert to upgrade off of Flowers, but I wouldn't be too worried about it. I think your team's pretty solid overall. You have the upside with Kyron and Amon-Ra and Kyler, Keenan off the bench. I like and Christian Watson as the upside shot on him. Yeah, I like this team overall. If you're looking to win now, would you make moves to acquire Cooper Kupp? Absolutely. We just did Cooper Kupp on the trade show. Russ and I were talking about him, and so there are trades in there that I think are fantastic examples of how to trade for Cooper Kupp. I wouldn't send a first-round pick for him. I would probably send it first if you get like Kupp in a second or Kupp in some other competing asset from a team that's looking to rebuild or retool. But I wouldn't send it first straight up for Cooper Kupp right now. But I am, especially if Kupp's on a team that is kind of like trending back down to look to 2025 and beyond. If you can pull him away as a contender, I think that is a fantastic move to do. Just because I think that he has the potential to move back into being a fantasy wide receiver one, especially this Puka stuff. Like it seems very non-serious, but if it lingers or he aggravates it again later on and Kupp is the wide receiver one for games without Puka, like as a mirror image of what happened last year, like Puka last year without Cooper Kupp was a monster. So imagine Cooper Kupp without Puka, except we don't have to imagine it because we saw it in 2021 and 2022. So yeah, I'd absolutely be trading for Cooper Kupp. I would trade multiple seconds for Kupp. I would trade like if you have like a Keon Coleman or a Lad McConkey, I would trade that for Cooper Kupp. as a contender. Again, I wouldn't pay it first, but maybe a 26 first I'd be willing to do. But I don't think I'd pay a 25 first unless you get something added on with Cooper Kupp. Like I think the one trade we had in the trade show yesterday was a 25 first and a small something for Kupp and Deontay Johnson. Love that. Absolutely love that type of deal. But I wouldn't trade it first directly for Cooper Kupp. Thank you for the in-depth Reggie talk. Yeah, absolutely, PJ. Thanks for your question. Hold on, I have to address this one because Matt took a break from being on his cruise to ask me about Tim Patrick. For those of you that don't know, I have Tim Patrick in a Dynasty League because Matt won't let me drop him. But I've been a fan of him for a few years now. And he's just kind of been like a running gag joke. I think Tim Patrick is going to be like a top 5 fantasy wide receiver this year. Coming back from the ACL injury, he's going to be the best wide receiver on the Broncos. And what an idiot for somebody trying to drop him for Eric Gray. What an idiot that person is. Joe, is it me or does CJ Stroud at QB3 not feel right? No, it absolutely does not feel right. I think that he is at best like the QB5 in my rankings. At best. I would take Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, and Kyler Murray. All right, so that makes CJ Stroud at best a QB6. But then I think you get conversations between him and Joe Burrow, him and Anthony Richardson. Like I think Stroud needs to be dropped down a peg. And I think we've done this before. We've crowned rookie quarterbacks off of really good years before, and they don't live up to our personal massive expectations. Like they might still be really good, but they don't live up to our expectations, and they probably don't live up to QB3 expectations. So I think Stroud needs to be knocked down a peg, and he might get there after 2025 or after 2024. In 2025, we might get there with him being dropped down. Here for the memes with the $2 super chat again. Is there a world where you would take Malik Neighbors 101? Nope. Nah, it's Marvin Harrison. Marvin Harrison Jr. If you would have asked me this before the NFL draft, I would have said yes. But then after the NFL draft, now that we know that Marvin Harrison's on the Cardinals and we know that Malik Neighbors is on the Giants, not that I don't like the Giants landing spot for Malik Neighbors. He's still very easily my wide receiver 2 in the 1.02 and 1 quarterback leagues. There's just no world where I would take Marvin Harrison Jr., where I would take Neighbors over Marvin Harrison Jr. Marv is he's that good. And the landing spot with Kyler Murray is that good. So, nah. Appreciate the super chat again, though. But yeah, I'm taking Marvin Harrison Jr. 12 out of 10 times. Fire Sports Cards. What are the best low price running backs to go after to fill backup roles and bench? Handcuffs. All the handcuff running backs that you can muster up. You can go as high as getting the best ones like Tyler Algier, Ty Chandler, Zach Charbonnet. You could go for guys that maybe have the potential to be the RB1. You can go, that's like Chase Brown or Rico Dowdle. Trying to think if there's anybody else. You could go for Elijah Mitchell and Jordan Mason with this Christian McCaffrey injury news. You can go for both of them. Or just fill in, or Gus Edwards, I think, would fall into the category of could potentially be the RB1 and could be good in that role. But then even still, any other handcuffs, you're looking at guys like Trace Sermon, Rasheen Ali, Tyrone Tracy. There's still like a bunch of them that you could go for that I'm blanking on at the moment. Khalil Herbert. Just running down through the teams. I mentioned like Braylon Allen earlier for the Jets. Handcuff running backs. That's what I mean. Like you can go as high. A lot of those handcuffs too probably don't mean anything to whoever has them right now. They're just sitting there on their bench. So if you construct like a bigger trade and don't go for those handcuffs directly, then you could probably just get those handcuffs for free. But if you go for like the Chase Browns or the Gus Edwardses, you'll probably need to pay a couple thirds, maybe even a late second, depending on who it is that you go after. See if you go for like Corum or Jalen Wright or Tyjae Spears, anybody like that. Like that'll cost you seconds. But some of the other ones might be cheaper, but with similar opportunity, or just go for the straight handcuffs. That's how I absolutely love building out the back end of my rosters is handcuffs. What we got? Cameron onions. Isn't that what Ceballos are onions? Am I wrong? That's not how you spell onions in Spanish, but that's what I thought of. Sorry, Cameron. Anyway, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. I'll go buy some onions with the $5. This is so stupid. Would you trade DK Metcalf for Devonta Smith straight up in a one quarterback PPR? I would keep DK Metcalf because I think that he is the team wide receiver one. I wouldn't be like these guys are probably both going to produce similarly just because of Devonta being the wide receiver 2 on a high end team versus DK being the wide receiver 1 on a more mediocre team or mediocre passing offense, I should say. But I think that there is upside because DK is the wide receiver 1 on his team. If that offense does better than expected and this new offensive coordinator is really, really good in Grubb, and even if Geno is like perfectly fine, then I think that there's a world where DK Metcalf gets back to seeing 130, 140 targets, 12 to 1,300 yards, 7, 8, 9 touchdowns. Like he could have a Nico Collins type year this year, and I would not at all be shocked. Whereas Devonta Smith seems locked in for like 75 to 80 for 1,100 ish and 7, maybe 8 touchdowns. Like that's what Devonta Smith just seems locked in as in that offense as the 2 for Jalen Hurts behind AJ Brown. Whereas DK Metcalf, I think, can get there and match Devonta Smith easily, but also has the upside and the higher ceiling to go higher than that. So I would keep DK Metcalf. Not to mention the fact that I just hate 1-for-1 same position trades, especially when they're 2 players in the same tier, both in like similar age from a dynasty standpoint. I just hate those trades just in general. So I would keep DK Metcalf and hope for the upside there. Oh, sorry, Nick. I skipped right over. Fire Sports Cards will come right back to you. Superflex tight end premium need a QB2 to pair with Jordan Love while I wait for May to play / hit. Other quarterback is Fields. So similar situation. Guy has Richardson, Caleb, Tua, Stafford, and Levis. Offered me Levis for Christian Watson and Ben Sinnott. I would absolutely take Will Levis for that. Yeah, I would give me Will Levis for that pretty easily. And then you have it feels like you have 3 similar kind of players because I feel like Levis is just Justin Fields, but with a starting role right now. But that might be good thing for fantasy football. Maybe not for the longevity of your quarterback situation because you might still have to address it later, especially if May ends up busting out and Fields is just a perennial backup and then Levis gets tagged with a backup role. But I would do this trade for Will Levis. I feel like that's a pretty solid smash to just go get Levis. All right, Fire Sports Card, back to you, man. 12 team start 11, 2 tight end premium. Running back room is McCaffrey, Henry, Achane, Elliott, and Connor. Major contender, absolutely. Would you move any of these running backs and for what? Probably not. At least not right now. I would take all these guys into the season. There's no reason to move any of them because you are that strong of a contender. I love Christian McCaffrey. Like the only thing that it would just be moving to age. Like if you can move CMC for Brees or Bijan, then I would do that. If you can move, I don't even know what to move Derrick Henry for age-wise because nobody's going to match him where he's at for production in his value range. So I don't really know what to do there. I love Devon Achane. Zeke and Connor are great. So I wouldn't move any of them. The only move that you can make to like add longevity to your team is to just move McCaffrey if you can get Bijan or Brees. But I wouldn't add like a second to McCaffrey to move to one of those two. And I wouldn't trade down from him. It would just basically be trading up. But I don't know if the other team wants to do that either. I don't know if they want to trade Bijan or Brees for McCaffrey, especially with this injury news. But no, I love the running back room that you've got going on. Love the fact that you have Harrison and Neighbors on the taxi squad. Keep them there, especially if you are contending, because then that frees up roster spots for handcuffs. Until then, you have to move Harrison or Neighbors if you have injuries or something like that. But if you can survive the whole year and with both of those guys on taxi and just stash a couple extra handcuffs, I think that would improve the chances of you winning this year as well. If your wide receivers are that good. So I like that. Now I wouldn't move any of them except for if you can move CMC, but whatever. What do we do with Justin Herbert and CeeDee Lamb? Well, CeeDee Lamb is the Dynasty wide receiver 2, so you don't do anything with him except enjoy all the fantasy points that he's going to give you in an offense that is probably going to throw it 700 times this year. So congratulations. CeeDee Lamb is fantastic. Not sure what the worry is. Justin Herbert, I've been preaching to move Justin Herbert for about 6 months now, so I don't know what to do with him now because everybody's caught up to the fact that Justin Herbert's not going to have a good year. It's all over the redraft market now. And so I don't really know what to do with him. I don't know if you could trade him for Kyler or Richardson or Trevor Lawrence, maybe. Like, that's basically it. I don't know what else to do with Justin Herbert outside that I haven't been trying to do with him for the past 6 months, except it's harder to do it now because more people have caught on to the fact that Herbert is probably not going to have a good year. So honestly, the best bet with Justin Herbert is probably just hold on to him. I wouldn't be adding a bunch to him to go up and get a better quarterback because he's still an elite quarterback. You're just waiting out the situation. So I think you just got to hold on to Herbert, and then hold on to CeeDee Lamb and enjoy fantasy points. Mustang, what's up, man? About to push the button on accepting Murray in a 25 first for CJ Stroud. Got nervous, but got a top 2 team with no 2025 picks. No, don't be nervous at all. This is fantastic. I just said before this that I would take Kyler Murray over CJ Stroud straight up, and then you just got a free first round pick. Congratulations. Take Kyler Murray in the first. This is fantastic. Cody with a T, if you could pick your draft spot in a 14-team Superflex league with 3rd round reversal, which spot are you taking? Scott Fishbowl, I took pick 12. That was a 12-team Superflex 3rd round reversal, so I took pick 12. I like that range because it allows you a lot of different flexibility and it gives you a higher pick in the 3rd round reversal. I think there's enough depth this year in terms of quarterbacks and wide receivers and running backs. If this is a redraft league, adding running backs in there too is nice. But I think there's enough depth with the quarterbacks and wide receivers this year that being towards the back of the 3rd round reversal makes sense because then that kicks you up forward in the 3rd round reversal in the beginning of the 3rd. So if I had to pick one spot, it'd probably be like 10 or 11. And then I would probably, I don't know if I like 13 or 14 as much, but 10, 11, 12 would kind of be the range that I like to go in. I would then go to like 8 or 9 instead of 13 or 14. But that, I think that 10 through 12 is like a sweet spot for you in a Superflex with 3rd round reversal. So that's a good question. Baker Kid, what are your thoughts on these wide receivers? In your opinion, the likelihood of them being startable on a week-to-week basis? Palmer, Wicks, Wilson, Jameson. We mentioned Palmer. That was at the very top of the show. We talked about Josh Palmer for a hot second. I said that I think that he has the opportunity to be the best fantasy wide receiver on the team. So I think that if I were to rank these guys in terms of likelihood that they are weekly startable flex options for you, it would go Palmer, Wicks, Jameson Williams, Michael Wilson. Now, it's not to say that I think Michael Wilson is not going to be startable every single week. It's just that I don't know where he fits on the target totem pole right now. Marv is fantastic. Trey McBride is fantastic. They're still going to run, and Connor can catch out of the backfield. So I just don't know where Michael Wilson like slots in and on that team individually. Like, I think that he has the widest range where I could see him being 1 and I could see him being 4. Like I just ranked him. And in terms of a startable asset every single week, but I just don't know what he is right now. Palmer, I feel pretty confident in. I feel like that he's the safest option of these 4. Wicks is really, really fun. And just on like a per route and per target basis is like really, really good. But he's also like, what could he be with all the other? I think that he's the 2nd best player on that team. But he might be like the 4th in terms of snaps on that team. And then you also got to include in Jacobs and the tight ends and stuff. So maybe I got to bump Wicks down. I still like him a lot though. Jameson, I don't really know what to do with just because Jameson is higher pedigreed Michael Wilson in the sense that he's in a very similar situation where Amon-Ra is going to get his, Laporte is going to get his. You got Gibbs out of the backfield. Monty's going to soak up another 30, 40 targets. So where does Jameson Williams slot in? I have no idea. And my fear is that he's just kind of like he's never startable on a week-to-week basis, that he is just like, oh my gosh, I got Thursday nighted so hard. My opponent had some guy that had 30 points on Thursday night. Now I'm projected to lose by 20. And instead of playing Josh Palmer or Dontavian Wicks in my flex like I have for most weeks, I am now going to throw in Jameson Williams because I need that home run, that he's going to hit that 50-yard touchdown there or something like that. So I think I'm going to amend my ranking. Josh Palmer, Michael Wilson, Dontavian Wicks, Jameson Williams, I think is the way that I would go with these four in terms of startability on a week-to-week basis. Final answer. Hopefully that covered that enough for you, Baker. Here for the memes, how do we feel about Brock Bowers? Should I consider taking him 104 if I have Goddard and other needs at wide receiver and running back? I have Brock Bowers ranked at 104. He's held that ever since the NFL, basically since before the NFL draft. So I would take him at 1.04 and not have any hesitation about it whatsoever. I think that Bowers is fantastic, and I think that he's going to be the immediate number 2 on that team and has the upside to be the number 1 if Devontae Adams gets moved. Not saying that he will, or that they're like, I've been like, ooh, I got secret insider information that Adams could get moved. But like, I could see Devontae Adams getting traded by the deadline if they're not competing. And that opens up the target share pretty tremendously for Brock Bowers. Bowers is a wide receiver, just playing the tight end position. And every report out of training camp is saying that he's well ahead of the curve. He's gotten everything down, which makes total sense because he's fantastic. Came in and as an 18-year-old led Georgia for like 900 yards and 10 touchdowns. Georgia as an 18-year-old freshman. So I have no qualms about what he's going to do as a 21-year-old rookie in the NFL. So yeah, I would take Brock Bowers 104 and I wouldn't even hesitate. Cameron has both Kyle Pitts and Dalton Kincaid. Do you think that you should try and pivot off of one or get more value now? Off of one and get more value now. I like holding on to both because then you have 2 dart throws at hitting on them. Like I think that Kyle Pitts, I think this is the year for the breakout season for Kyle Pitts. Dalton Kincaid is obviously getting a lot of love right now as the probable number 1 target for Josh Allen this year with all the other wide receivers that they have and getting rid of Diggs. I wouldn't really be looking to move off of either one just because I think that they both have similar upside if they both hit. And so their values could go up dramatically if they both do really well this year. But also if one of them or the other breaks out and the other one doesn't, I think that gives you 2 shots on hitting on the next kind of like breakout tight end, you know? So I would keep both of them because I think they both have good opportunities to gain a lot of value this year. Or worst case scenario, one of them has to hit, right? Hopefully one of them has to hit. So I think a lot would have to go wrong for both of them not to do well. Whereas I think that at least one of these guys is going to hit upside shot as they both do and they gain value. So I'd hold on to both of them unless you get some wild, crazy deal from a team that really needs a tight end. But it's got to be a clear overpay for me to move off of both these guys. James, would you rather have Michael Wilson or Jalen Polk? I'd rather have Jalen Polk. Polk, at least right now, is trending as the wide receiver 1 for the Patriots, whatever that role might be. But Polk, I think, was a better prospect than Michael Wilson and is in a better situation in terms of team role and target share. So I would rather have Jalen Polk. So we wouldn't want to go Brooks instead, given that I only have 1 running back right now. The Pacheco deal isn't sliding. Only concern with Bowers is my lack of running backs on the roster. It's a multi-year rebuild, and here the 25 class is nice at running back. Well, the fact that you're in a rebuild, I don't really want to prioritize running backs. I think Brooks makes sense for a rebuild just because he's probably not going to be all of that super amazing this year, considering that he's probably going to, they're already talking about him starting off on the pup, so he's going to miss time. Then he's got to get worked into the offense, and he might be like a second half thing. But 2025 is really when Jonathan Brooks is probably going to kick it into gear. So I don't mind Brooks from a rebuild perspective, but I would not be prioritizing running backs as a multi-year rebuild. And like you said, the 25 class has, I could probably name about 10 guys right now that all have the opportunity to be like the rookie RB1 in next year's class. And it all just depends on how all of them do and produce, because they all have various different concerns with injuries or workload or all that kind of stuff. It's just, 2025's class looks really, really nice, but a lot of things, they all need to produce well this year for their values to really shake out. But as of right now, in a multi-year rebuild, I would take Brock Bowers even more. That just adds to my confidence in drafting Brock Bowers at the 1.04. I don't think Dallas Goedert. I don't really care about Dallas Goedert either. You can find running backs whenever, and running backs should honestly, they should be the last thing that you care about as a rebuilding team right before you go competitive. Figure out if this is a one quarterback league, so you can grab like a stud quarterback, get your wide receivers. You're going to have Brock Bowers, then fill out your running backs after that. Aiyuk in a third or T in 2 seconds. I'm still taking Brandon Aiyuk on this one. This is not enough incentive to trade down from Brandon Aiyuk for me. The 2 seconds is just kind of, if it was T in a first, I would do it. I would take T in a first for Brandon Aiyuk, but 2 seconds, this doesn't move the needle enough for me to move off of Aiyuk, and I'm not worried enough about trades or whatever to move off of Aiyuk. Like I mentioned before, like I'm treating Brandon Aiyuk the same way that I did a few months ago in terms of value before any potential possible trades or anything like that, or we even knew who the teams possibly could be that he's traded to. Still holding on to Brandon Aiyuk, and I don't. This doesn't move the needle for me to move off of him. It's 2 seconds. If it was the first, like I said, I would do it, but 2 seconds doesn't do anything for me. Nice. I forgot to get water, so that's been rough, but we're making it through. All right, that was the end of the questions here. So, we'll see if this will be first last call, because I'm sure I'll start answering a couple more questions, and then I'll be going until 1:30 or something like that. That's always how it happens. But if no questions really pop up over the next minute or two, then we'll call it a Friday. See, here we go. Matt, he was typing this whole time. He was worried. Matt, 12-team, one quarterback, start 9. Pay the ultimate price for JSN for Chase with JSN the 108 and 225 first. Holy cow! Any more moves to make or ride this team out for now? 12-team, one quarterback, start 9. The only thing that if you really wanted to ensure your competitiveness for 2024 is to move Brock Bowers for a different tight end. One that you're more confident in the production from this year. Like if you can move Bowers for Mark Andrews, or if you could move over to Kyle Pitts, maybe you get something added on top. That would be like the only thing that I could see. Maybe T. Higgins needs upgraded then too, but you already paid 3 first-round picks to move up to get Chase. But T and Bowers are basically the only two that I think would really make sense to move. And even at that point, like I'm not actively trying to move both of them, because I think that your team is fantastic. It would just be maybe grab a couple extra depth handcuff running backs and call it a day. That'd basically be it. I mean, your team's fantastic, so there's nothing really like I said, like if you want to move Bowers for Mark Andrews, and even if you can move Bowers for Andrews plus Ty Chandler or some other handcuff running back, or move T. Higgins and move him over, and then you get you move T for DK in a handcuff, or Michael Pittman in a handcuff, or George Pickens in a handcuff, assuming that Aiyuk doesn't get traded there, because that would hurt George Pickens. But those are just like micro moves where you could try to side grade and get something on top of it to do the side grade, rather than just trading off of them entirely or upgrading them or anything like that, especially if you don't have as many assets on the back end to really upgrade from. Side grading might be the better way to go about it. But your team's fantastic. You can take this right into the season and not have to worry about it at all. So I'm looking forward to the championship in December from you, Matt. Am I nuts to trade away Josh Allen in this league to tier down or keep QB1 as a centerpiece? I don't think you're nuts. In a one quarterback league, you could trade down to numerous other quarterbacks if they're willing to do that. Like you can move down to Lamar, you can move down to Kyler, and get something else on top that could help speed up your rebuild. Not against that whatsoever. I probably wouldn't move down dramatically. Like I probably wouldn't move from Allen to like Jordan Love or anything like that. Like anybody in that kind of tier, unless you get something like really phenomenal on top. Like if you can move Allen for, man, I don't even know what you can what that plus piece would be in a one quarterback league. If you can move Allen for like Dak and Jalen Waddle or something, I don't know. My one quarterback values are so weird, especially trading down at the quarterback. I'm not against it, but I think it's got to be the right quarterback and it's got to be the right trade. I just don't really know what one quarterback values are like that to help you without knowing what an actual trade. Like if you just said, "Here's the trade," I would help you with that. But I putting thoughts in my head of what the trades could look like, I'm kind of struggling with that from the one quarterback perspective. Because in my mind, I'm just so into the Superflex that I don't have one quarterback league, so I don't play in them. So I don't know what those values look like. I'm sorry. No stress, my man. Yeah. If you have like you're like, I just got offered Kyler and a second for Josh Allen, would you take that? Then I could help, and I would take that. But giving you actual trade examples is harder for me. You mentioned my quarterbacks being similar to Levis. Would you go after Tua or Stafford instead? Would cost a lot to get Anthony Richardson or Caleb from him. From a security standpoint, I like Tua and Stafford more than Levis. Levis has a lot more upside. And I do think that trade, like selling Christian Watson and Ben Sinnott for Will Levis, I think is an absolute win to go get Will Levis. He just does feel similar in the sense that there really isn't much security there. And that's where a lot of the risk reward comes from, because there is so much risk, but there is a lot of reward. That's just how stuff works in life. And it works the same in Dynasty too. So if you wanted more confidence in overall production and just the quarterback still being a starter in 2 to 3 years, I think that you could maybe pay up for Tua and Stafford. I don't know what you would have to pay on top of Watson and Sinnott to make that happen. Like if it was, I would pay Watson, Sinnott, and add a second to go up and get Tua, if that's kind of what gets the deal done, or add a couple thirds or maybe another kind of Ben Sinnott-ish player to go get Matthew Stafford. I think Levis and Stafford are pretty similar. So if you could do Watson and Sinnott for Stafford, I'm not against that either. And I would add something to go up and get Tua. Probably not a first. Maybe a first. I'd probably add a first to go get Tua. I'd ideally like to not, but I probably would. But yeah, it all comes down to a confidence and comfort level for you on how, and your risk tolerance. How much do you want to tolerate the fact that you might not have a QB2 again in a year if all three of those guys bust? SJE in a rebuild sold pretty much everything already. What kind of value would you look for Aaron Jones? I would take a second. Any second round pick is what I would go for. I'd offer every single contender that has a second round pick. I would ask for a second. 25, 26. That's what I would go for. I would really not like to sell him for a couple thirds. If that's the best that you're getting, it's just kind of like a couple thirds or like a Michael Wilson kind of player. Not to harp. We talked about Michael Wilson a lot today. He's just the guy that came to my mind. I'd like a second or something along those lines. And if you're not getting that now, I would take him into the season, see if he starts producing, see if other contenders start losing running backs to injuries and maybe their need goes up. Then you can sell Aaron Jones at a heightened price in season as long as he stays healthy. But I'd be willing to take the risk on him staying healthy in season for a few weeks if you're not getting a second now. If you get a second now, 25, 26, I'd take it. Mr. E with the Ahsoka avatar, 10-team, one quarterback, have the 110 pick. Any recommendations on who I should look for in the draft and build my team around? This is a redraft? I'm assuming this is redraft. I'm going to move on to a different question, and you can let me know if this is redraft or dynasty, because I never know with how these questions are phrased, and we're in August. So I'll come back to you if you tell me if this is redraft or dynasty. Slightly certified I like it. Have Kincaid, Bowers, and McBride. What's the move? Didn't want to take Bowers in my rookie draft, but feel like I had to in a 104 Dynasty. All right, we'll be back to you in a sec. Sorry. Just wanted to clarify, so I gave you the right answer. Trade, yeah, here I would trade one of them. Maybe Bowers isn't the guy to trade just because that may or may not be true. You could try to see if Bowers is not as valuable in this league or not. You'd find that out based on what you're getting in offers. I would throw all three of these guys on the trade block and then see which one nets you the most. That's probably the way that I would attack it. And just see what happens. Because I'd trade one of these three guys, but they all feel very similar enough that whoever gives me the most back is who gets traded. So that's probably what I would do. I'd send out offers if you're looking at wide receiver or running back or upgrading somewhere. I would send out multiple offers with multiple different options for the tight ends, see if any of them bite, see which one gets you more. And that's the guy that I would trade. Oh, sorry, Mr. E, we're back. Cameron, hold on real second. I got to answer for Mr. E. In a 10-team, one quarterback, have the 110 pick in Dynasty. Any recommendations on who I should look for in the draft and build my team around? So in a one quarterback league, wide receivers become the prominent asset. So ideally, I'd like to start with a wide receiver. I don't know if you're going to get as phenomenal of one at the 10 spot. You might. If you can get Puka. I'm looking at. Oh wait, July 2024. This is our most recent ADP from here. If you can get Puka or AJ Brown or Garrett Wilson, I think that's number one at the 10 spot. And then if you can get two of those guys, because it's a 10 team, you have the last pick. If you can get two of Puka, AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson, then I would call that a massive win at the 10, at the 1-2 turn. I probably wouldn't go for a running back there. Brees might be there. If you get Brees and AJ Brown, I wouldn't be against that. But if it was like Gibbs or CMC or Jonathan Taylor as your best available, I'd probably pass and just take two wide receivers. I would bump Nico up into that kind of tier. Or if you get Malik Neighbors, then that would look pretty solid too. So that's kind of like that's the grouping. I would ideally like to leave with two wide receivers, but if like Brees Hall is there, it's probably too hard to pass up. He probably won't be there, but it would be intriguing. And then the 3-4 turn, you could dive into the quarterback here. Lamar Jackson might be there. Jalen Hurts might be there. If you wanted to lock down a stud, I don't mind that, but I'm privy to Kyler Murray, and you could probably get Kyler Murray at the 5-6 turn, or maybe even wait till the 7th. You could roll the dice on that, see what happens. If you don't take a quarterback at the 3-4 turn, you could look at here's where you can kind of look at running back. I like Jonathan Brooks there. I like Isaiah Pacheco there. You could go for a tight end here with Kincaid or Andrews or somebody like that, or maybe Kyle Pitts, depending on how your league is attacking the tight end position, especially because you got to wait all the way down until the 5-12. Then you got to wait basically 2 rounds. And if you're worried that one of those top tight ends is going to come back to you, I would pull the trigger on one of them. And then at the 5-6, you could take Cooper Kupp to help you compete, Deontay Johnson, Rashee Rice. You could take a shots on some of those. And then fill in running back as you go. Like if you already locked in, if you get Brees Hall or if you get Jonathan Brooks or Isaiah Pacheco, I'm willing to wait down and you can fill in your other running backs with like a Joe Mixon, with a David Montgomery, with a Najee Harris. You could get a Brian Robinson later, James Conner later. That's kind of how I would be attacking the wide receiver or the running back position if you get all the other positions locked down. So hopefully that helps, Mr. E. Cameron, in Dynasty PPR, I have Waddle, Olave, Pittman, Metcalf, T. Higgins, Zay Flowers. Do you try and trade tier up for a more elite? Yes, I would. You have a lot of wide receiver 2s that all are going to score anywhere from 8 to 20 fantasy points any given week. And it's going to be impossible to know which week to do this. And if you're not able to start all these guys, you're going to have to make lineup decisions. And that is one of the worst things that I hate doing about fantasy is I want to make as few lineup decisions as possible. And you can help by doing that by upgrading. So if you can move Olave and T. Higgins and go up and get Puka or AJ Brown or Garrett Wilson, you can move Metcalf and Zay Flowers and do the same thing. If you could do that twice, I don't know how many starters there are in this. If this is, is this the 10-man PPR one quarterback league? Maybe potentially. I don't know how many starters you start. But if you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you have 6 of these guys. If you do 2 tier up moves with Olave, Metcalf, or Pittman, Higgins, and Flowers, those would be the 5 guys that I'd be looking at tiering up from. I'd probably keep Waddle. But the other 5, I think, are all on the block to tier up. And if you can get 2 of Marv or Puka or AJ Brown, or if you could somehow get into the Jamar Chase or Amon-Ra tier, that would be fantastic. And then now your new wide receiver room looks like, we'll say best case scenario, Amon-Ra, AJ Brown, Jalen Waddle, and Michael Pittman. There's your new 4. That's like best case scenario that you're able to pull that off. And if you can, that's exactly what 2. And you're starting. You can only start 3 of these guys. So please, absolutely trade up and do that for sure. Jonathan's being offered ETN, Adonai, a 25 first and 26 first for Gibbs, Deshaun, maybe Christian Kirk, 1 quarterback. Man, I'd take this in an instant. I don't view much of a difference between, like, Gibbs for ETN in a first, I think is fine. But then you still have Adonai and another first for Deshaun Watson and maybe Christian Kirk in a 1 quarterback league. I would take the 2 first and ETN side on this one pretty easily. Thanks for your insight. Another one. Are you rebuilding around Laporta in tight end premium or looking to trade down, tier down for assets? I'd be looking in a rebuild. I would tier down from Sam Laporta. You don't even have to go that far. You can go down to a Kincaid, to a Kyle Pitts, to a Brock Bowers, and get something else on top. This is Justin talks about this. He's talked about it in a handful of like how to like rebuild, trade, or tips and tricks kind of videos that we've posted over the past year or two. He talks about it a lot of tearing down from your top assets to split it up into multiple assets that have the chance of gaining value. So especially like if you're able to trade Laporta for Kyle Pitts and insert young wide receiver here that has the upside to gain a lot of value, then I think that's an absolute win. Because you're not losing much, I don't think, going from Laporta down to Pitts or Kincaid or whoever, and you're giving yourself a second dart on hitting on that player to gain value, and then that just speeds up your rebuild. So I would absolutely be loving to do this with Sam Laporta. Was trying to get Ladd instead of AD, but not budging. Yeah, if you can get Ladd, then I'm not worried about it. I'd take Adonai. The main crux of that was I would trade Jahmyr Gibbs and Deshaun Watson for ETN and 2 first. That's like the main crux of it. And however else that fits around there is fine by me. But yeah, I would do that for sure. Nice new digs. Thank you. You see the Penn State jersey back there. What are your projections for Jahan Dotson this season? Got him as a throw-in for my rebuilding team. Love that as a throw-in for sure. I have mixed feelings on Jahan Dotson this year. I'm hoping that Jane Daniels can take this offense to the next level. I'm hoping that Cliff Kingsbury can do that as well, or at least maybe Kingsbury's in the guy to take it to like the next level, but like be better than what it was over the past couple of years. I think Dotson's going to be solid. I think that he's not going to really be anything more than a wide receiver 3, though. You're kind of hoping for touchdowns, which he is very good at, but I'm hoping for like a bounce back year from him to where maybe he is like a Brandon Cooks kind of player, like 800 and a solid handful of touchdowns. That's kind of what I'm looking for Dotson. Hopefully he gets there because I still think Terry McLaurin is the wide receiver 1. We'll see what happens with Sanat and Eckler and Brian Robinson. If they trade for Brandon Aiyuk, Dotson kind of feels dead. Maybe Dotson gets traded back. That would be fun. If Dotson goes to the Niners, that would be really, really fun. If they pull that off with Aiyuk going to the Commanders. I think the Commanders are out on trading for Aiyuk, but that would be fun. But with Dotson in his current situation as the 2, I think you're hoping for him to be Brandon Cooks or Tyler Lockett or something like that. Like bad Tyler Lockett, not like 2020, 2021 Tyler Lockett. Like bad Tyler Lockett of like 900 yards and a solid handful of touchdowns. I think that's what you're hoping for from Dotson. That's what I'm hoping for, at least. Anything more than that is icing on the cake. Jonathan's trying to tear down running back to recoup some picks while trying to be competitive. The Kirk part is up in the air. Kirk is good now, but older. I may try offering Bateman first. If you can offer Bateman instead of Christian Kirk, I would love to do that. Sorry, I completely missed this comment in relation to the other one and with the McConkey one. But yeah, if you could offer Bateman with the puff pieces that he's been getting out of training camp, then I think that would be way better than giving up Christian Kirk. Will, which player you buying into the most where you think by early to midseason the value in a trade yields a first plus in Dynasty? All right, so we're looking at like an ROI player. So a player that I could buy now that I can sell later. Buy now, sell later. Running backs are probably the easiest answer for this. Oliver's having a rough time. I don't know if you can hear him crying in the background. Yeah, but running backs are probably the easy answer for this. Anybody kind of in that RB2 to RB3 range that can produce, and especially with running back injuries, if contenders need help, guys like Joe Mixon or David Montgomery, DeAndre Swift, any kind of that sort of nature, I think is kind of where I would be looking at. If you're looking at like wide receivers, I think that could be Cooper Kupp could be one for sure that you could buy low on Cooper Kupp and then sell him for a lot more if he's really producing. Godwin to an extent, maybe. Or maybe guys like Jaden Reed or Christian Watson or Xavier Worthy, but they're already kind of worth-ish fringe firsts. Not sure if you could sell for first plus, but that's kind of where I would be looking at with those kind of players. Kupp, I think, fits this perfectly, especially if you're not contending. I think you can buy low on Cooper Kupp and then try to sell him later. Do you think Ladd and Pittman could move the needle to grab a top 6 wide receiver? It have to be somebody that really, really likes Ladd McConkey. I don't know if you can get top 6, but you might be able to. I would do this for Nico Collins. If you can go up and get Nico for this, if you can get, I would do this for maybe Waddle as well. But like Nico, I think is like the peak person that I would go for and do this. I would try it. If somebody really, really likes Ladd McConkey, then I think it's possible. But I don't know if people like McConkey enough now to make that move for a top 6 guy. But you could try it. Nico would be the person that I'd go for. Genji, what's up, man? Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims at first, or the Slim Reaper and Ray Davis. This is Devonta Smith pretty easily. And this one's Kenneth Walker pretty easily. Boom. There you go. Easy questions, Genji. Give me something harder. Thanks. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, for sure, Eric. Yeah, I would go for Nico. You could also shoot it out, see if maybe somebody's worried about AJ Brown because of age. You could try for Tyreek Hill if you're competing because of age. Maybe go for Malik Neighbors. Maybe go for Garrett Wilson. But I think Nico, that gets it done for Nico, and I would love Nico Collins for that. Boom. All right. We made it to 70 minutes. So this will be final call for any questions if anybody's got anything. Otherwise, we can wrap things up here on another Friday. I got a rehearsal dinner that I got to go to tonight. My sister's getting married tomorrow, so rehearsal dinner tonight, wedding tomorrow. Busy weekend. And then we're full steam ahead for football season. AJ Brown owner might be doable. He loves Pittman. Yeah. Give it a shot. I would go for those two. just because they seem like their values in trades might be a little less than where their value actually should be, and both going to be highly productive. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody for hanging out for the past hour and 10 minutes on this Friday afternoon. Again, like if you have any more questions or anything like that, feel free to drop it in the comment section of this video after the video is ended. Poor baby boy. Yeah, if you have any further questions, drop them in the comments of this video after the video is done, and or in any other comments of a video, any other videos, because I answer all the comments and stuff, so we can dive deeper into any other questions too over kind of text, so to speak. But otherwise, I'll be back next Friday as well, 12 p.m. Eastern time. So yeah, hopefully you guys have a fantastic rest of your Friday. Have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy all of the preseason football that we're going to get. Hopefully we get some starters and other players that are very, very relevant playing, but not getting hurt. It's always what we want, but it's fun to have somewhat meaningful football back. And hopefully you guys enjoy the weekend with all of that football. And yeah, appreciate you guys for hanging out, and we will see you guys next week. Oh, camera's over here again. I need to get used to that. Peace.